Hi, this is Ms. Zahra, and this is part 2 of our exam review for 2024-2025. If in this Unit 3, Module 1, Lesson 2, you will get 3 questions, all multiple choice, so this is for 12 marks. The first page that you will be tested on, it's only about the image. But remember, the image can also include questions that could be about the content that was on the page. So we'll focus on that as well. Okay, so let's look at the picture. This image shows ammonite fossils, and these fossils are the remains of living things that lived a long time ago. So the remains of living things from long ago. And when we say long ago, we mean millions of years ago. So these fossils were found inside of rock. So they were found in rock. And the name of the rock they were found in is called sedimentary rock. Sedimentary rock is made of small pieces of rock stuck together. So it's made of small pieces of rock, and those small pieces of rock are called sediment. Okay, so the little pieces of rock over here, the sediment, glued together, create a big rock called sedimentary rock. And inside of that rock, we find our fossils. And the fossils are the remains of living things from millions of years ago. So why do scientists study this? They study these fossils because as they look at them, it gives them clues about different things from the past. So it tells us about the climate conditions. That means, what was the weather like? Was it hot and wet? Was it dry and cold? These types of things. So how do we know what the weather was like? By looking at the organism that we find in the rock. So let's look at an example. Inside of this rock, we can see that they found fern fossils. Fern is from a tree. And this type of tree grows in a wet place. So we know that this tree was in a wet place, that maybe there was even a forest if we find many of them, because you're not just going to find one, it's probably going to be more. So you know that this area was covered in trees and it was wet. If you found a different organism, like in the layer below, it says a shark tooth and a shell. Both of these things live in the ocean. So we can tell that the environment changed from here to here. Before it was ocean, it was underwater. And now it's land because there's trees. So we can tell that the environment has changed. That's point number 2. So from looking at the fossil, we can tell the climate, what the weather was like. We can tell the environment, how it has changed. And we can also look at the kind of animal or organism that used to live there and maybe what they ate or what their size was. We can tell over here on the bottom, right in the bottom layer, that there's a fish and a leaf. If there's a leaf and a fish, that means there must have been a pond because there is both land and water. So if we look over here again at the type of organism, the type of fossil we find, it gives us clues about how the environment has changed. You find footprints of an animal. Footprints tells me that there was land, that this animal could walk. Okay, so let's look at an example without any information and talk about oldest and youngest. I know you can see those words over here. So when rock forms, it forms from the bottom up. So the bottom is actually the oldest layer, and you will find the oldest fossil in the oldest layer. And when we go up, we will find now the youngest layer, the youngest fossil. So if we look at this example, we can see there's a fish over here. A fish tells me that at this point, the environment was covered with water. Then I find an amphibian. An amphibian is a kind of animal that lives on land and water. So I can tell that the environment is changing. There is a change happening here. It is now changing to land. Then we find dinosaurs and mammals. It doesn't help us to know if there's water as well as land, but we can see the kind of animal that grew over there. Okay, so again, main thing to look out for is if you find something that lives in water, you can tell the environment changed, that it was in water and now it is no longer in water. If you find a leaf, tree, then it's going to tell me that this land was once a forest and there was land. How is a tree growing, right? So over here we can see some questions that you may get. You may pause it and look at some of the answers. And now we're going to move on to the next page. Okay, so over here we're going to talk about the changes that we see in the land. And there can be changes that are quick and changes that are slow. When a volcano erupts, this is an example of a quick change. Because as it's erupting, this lava and smoke and rock is going to change the land immediately. Okay, and over here we have an earthquake. An earthquake happens suddenly, and because it happens suddenly, it is a very quick change that it causes to the Earth's surface. So one of the examples of an earthquake's change, it could cause a landslide. A landslide, you learned about in grade 3, is when the land slides down. So a landslide is something that can be caused because of an earthquake. Another thing the earthquake can cause, it can cause our S-shaped fold in the mountain to become like a slipped shape. You will see a slip in the S shape. So instead of a beautiful S shape, you'll see like S, sudden slip, and then it will continue on. So if you see those slips, it means there was an earthquake. It's evidence that there was an earthquake at some point. Okay, now let's talk about some slow changes. And we did say volcanoes can make quick changes, but if a volcano erupts under the ocean floor, it's going to form land. And this happens very slowly. So there's a small opening in the earth, some lava comes out, it becomes hard, it makes a little bigger volcano. And the volcano becomes taller and taller and taller until eventually it comes out from the ocean. And now it becomes an island. And this does not happen quickly. This takes millions of years as the land becomes hard and more land forms like a stack of pancakes until eventually it breaks through the water to form an island. So this takes a long time to happen. Another thing that takes a long time to happen is when a river cuts the plateau to make a canyon. So it happens slowly. It just starts with a river, and then some areas as the river is moving, it breaks the land. And we are going to talk about this word in the next section. Breaking the land is called weathering. So as the land is broken by the river, we call it weathering. The rock is not just broken, it's broken and it moves. So we have weathering and erosion from water. And eventually it keeps happening over hundreds of years, and it will form canyon. So this was formed by water flowing over a long time. So the water eroded or it broke the land and took it away over a long time. And another thing that can take a long time to form is mountains. So mountains are formed when the plates push together, and as they push together, it moves the land up and creates mountains. And this can take hundreds of thousands to millions of years. So it's a long time. So here are some possible questions from page 34 and 35. Both of those are about the slow and the quick changes occurring on Earth. Okay, thank you for watching this video. This is the end of part 2.